Without a budget deal, the federal government shuts down on Friday. Party leaders on both sides of the aisle, they're scrambling for a compromise or at least an extension. I want to take a look at what happens if there's a shutdown. Now, the last time it happened, it was 15 years ago. The feds had to close 368 national parks as well as national monuments, museums. If it happens this time around, U.S. troops we're talking about, including those fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, could see their paychecks interrupted. Tax return could be stalled if you haven't filed yet. And for federal workers, during the two government shutdowns in the 1990s, hundreds of thousands of them were sent home. That's what this all means. So while lawmakers play let's make a deal over the current budget, House Republicans looking now ahead to 2012. House Budget Chairman Paul Ryan today unveiled a plan. Includes a bold move, many would say, dramatic overhaul of Medicare and Medicaid. So we got two of the best politicos in the business to talk about this. Democratic strategist Jamal Simmons and Republican consultant and CNN contributor Alex Castellanos. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Good to be here. Jamal?
Thank you.
Start with you. Let's talk about political courage, right? Right now, White House Republicans, in their current battle over the budget, they're fighting over whether to shave off, 2 or 4% of this year's deficit. The Republicans now looking long-term, proposing $6 trillion, with a T, in cuts over the next 10 years. They're going after entitlements like Medicare, Medicaid. Is that what this country needs? Isn't that what the country needs? Political courage to tackle the real costs?
You know, the country does need political courage, and the one thing you can say about the Republicans is that they are remarkably consistent. They want cuts for everyone. There's cuts in there for Medicaid and Medicare for seniors in the future. There are cuts in there for domestic spending, which will affect education for our kids. And then they want to cut taxes for the wealthy. But I'm not sure that's the kind of shared sacrifice that the American public is looking for. The American public is looking for somebody and for politicians who are going to put everybody in the pot together. And they recognize that we're going to have to cut defense, we're going to have to raise taxes on some people to raise revenue, and then we're going to have to figure out what to do with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security to make it all work. And frankly, the president's going to have to come to the table with some ideas on those also.
So, Alex, is there a better alternative here, a better idea that the Republicans could have come up with than dismantling Medicare, medical benefits for seniors, and deep cuts in Medicaid benefits to the poor?
I'm not sure that's the right way to look at it, Suzanne.
Why not?
You know, because the only people who've really cut Medicare are the Democrats and President Obama, who last year cut $500 billion of Medicare to grow government in Washington for the president's health care plan. So when the Democrats spend all this money we don't have, they're the ones who are cutting Medicare and Medicaid. They're taking money from that. What Republicans are trying to do is save Medicare, save Medicaid by growing the economy, taking money out of Washington's pocket and putting it back in Americans' pockets so we can have some economic growth. So it's a plan exactly for what Jamal's talking about, shared sacrifices.
But Alex, I mean, you've got when you take a look at the GOP plan, they are talking about dismantling Medicare as we know it today 10 years from now, because they're talking essentially about a voucher system, not, you know, if you paying into a private, private system instead of what we have today. I mean, it is radically different.
They're talking about a defined contribution plan where you'd have some stake in helping control Medicare costs, which is, by the way, the only way. You know, either we put the price control mechanisms in the hands of some bureaucrats in Washington and politicians with artificial cost-cutting, or else we put the cost-cutting mechanisms in the hands of people who actually use the government services. So the Republican plan trusts people, doctors and patients. The Democratic plan trusts Washington politicians. I think the American people know which one to choose. But look, this is a very bold plan. At the end of the day, if we don't stop letting Washington eat all the seed corn, and we don't put that seed corn in Americans' pockets, there'll be no economic growth, there'll be no money for Medicaid, Medicare, and there'll be no jobs.
Do you think...
Suzanne, you asked a question about courage, though, in your first question was about courage. And it's amazing that the Republicans seem to have a lot of courage when it comes time to take on Medicare and Medicaid, which they've never really been that fond of. They've got a lot of courage when it comes time to take on domestic spending. But they don't have a lot of courage when it comes to go to their wealthy donors and ask them to pay a little bit more to help get us out of the hole. And
Right
Alex,
now.
I'd I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you about whether or not you guys have any plans to go to your wealthy donors and say, you know what, we're with you, but we're not going to be able to support all these tax loopholes for oil companies.
Look, Republicans are willing to cut defense. We're willing to cut all the way across the board. The problem right now is that by raising taxes on the people who are already carrying the largest portion of the tax load, you actually get less revenue because they take their income and their work and their plants and they move them somewhere else. There's a limit to how much taxes you can get by raising taxes. You actually suppress economic growth and you end up with less money. So what you're suggesting is actually a plan that'll shrink the economy and produce less revenue. And you know what that means? Your plan actually screws Medicare, screws Medicaid, cuts the very vital services you're talking about. Now, it's good politically, oh, we're going to tax the rich, but at the end it produces less money and hurts everyone.
I'm not sure BP and ExxonMobil will I'm not sure BP and ExxonMobil will be hurt too much by a few more taxes.
All right, Jamal,
actually, we have the largest corporate taxes in the world.
We're going to have to leave it there. This is a debate that is going to continue. Obviously, a lot of people watching this very closely, and fundamentally a very different view of the role of the government and what it means to people in the future, particularly when it comes to providing health care and providing for those less fortunate. Thank you, Alex Castellanos, Jamal Simmons. Appreciate you having